There's a buzz coming out of Las Vegas, and it's not from the casinos. It's from the practice field. Tyrie Wilson, the Raiders' 7th overall pick just a couple drafts ago, is turning heads, not with words, not with hype, but with his presence. Reports from Raiders OTAs suggest Wilson is finally starting to look like the player the front office envisioned on draft night. Physically, he looks transformed, leaner, stronger, faster, explosive. And for RaiderNation, that's exactly what you want to hear. This offseason, he was healthy, fully healthy. No setbacks, no rehab assignments, just time, space, and hunger to get better. And according to someone in the building, someone who's watched these practices over the last 2 years, nobody stands out more than Tyrie Wilson, not even close. This is the version the Raiders were waiting for. Let's be real. Expectations come fast in the NFL, especially when you're drafted that high. When you're a top 10 pick, you're not just supposed to contribute, you're supposed to dominate. And up to this point, Wilson hasn't lived up to that billing. But this year, this is the pivot point. The pressure is real. The stakes are high. And if he doesn't deliver in 2025, there's a real chance the Raiders start looking elsewhere for help off the edge. That's the brutal truth of the league. Produce or be replaced. But right now, there's hope. The images coming out of camp show it. Tyrie looks different, not just in build, but in demeanor. He's sharper, more defined, built like someone who's been grinding all offseason. That doesn't guarantee production on Sundays, but it shows commitment. It shows a player who knows what's at stake. And it matters. Because with Malcolm Kuntz likely being eased back into action early in the season, the opportunity is right in front of Wilson. He won't just be part of the rotation. He'll need to be the guy opposite Max Crosby. No more excuses, no more waiting. Now's the time. Let's not forget, Tyrie Wilson was drafted to be a cornerstone, a game changer, a force, a player taken at number. 7 overall should be rivaling Crosby, not just learning from him. So far, that gap is wide, but it doesn't have to stay that way. This year could change everything. It's up to Tyrie Wilson to close the gap, to rewrite his story. Because if he brings the fire we're starting to see, this could be the season RaiderNation remembers why they took him in the first place. There's something brewing in Las Vegas, and it's not just from Max Crosby's podcast. Crosby recently opened up about this year's defensive line. While he didn't call out Tyrie Wilson by name, the message was loud and clear. This group has the potential to be something special. And he's right. If the pieces fall into place, this could be one of the best defensive fronts in the entire NFL. The key, of course, is health. Malcolm Kuntz is working his way back. He's on the field, but no one's quite sure how he'll look come September. Then there's Christian Wilkins, an elite disruptor, but still recovering from a foot issue. If those two are fully ready to go, they join a unit already anchored by Max Crosby and possibly elevated by a revitalized Tyrie Wilson. This could be the season where everything clicks. It's Wilson's 3rd year, the one where we often see edge rushers take that leap. Just look at what Travon Walker did in Jacksonville. Walker didn't come into the league with a polished pass rush toolkit. No flashy moves, no spins or hesitations, but he developed. He leaned on raw power, refined his first step, and turned into a major problem for offensive tackles last season. Tyrie Wilson, he's not there yet, but he could be. Walker and Wilson share that same foundation: strength, length, and effort. What separates them right now is burst. Walker showed more twitch in year 3. Wilson hasn't yet, but that could change. Because for the first time since he was drafted, Tyrie Wilson is fully healthy, and that matters. His rookie season? A wash. He never had an offseason, no camp, limited preseason. It was survival mode from day one. Even last year, he spent most of the spring and summer focused on foot rehab. While Max Crosby was stacking workouts and sharpening his craft, Wilson was just trying to get right. But this year, no limitations, no rehab, just work. And according to those around the team, he's made the most of it. He's added muscle, refined his frame, and looks quicker off the ball. That's not just conditioning, that's development. That's a player who understands what's on the line. Now, let's be honest. Looking back, many fans would have preferred Jalen Carter or Darnell Wright in that draft. But none of that matters anymore. What matters is what Tyrie Wilson becomes now, because the tape he put out at Texas Tech hasn't shown up in silver and black. Yet, that can change. This is the year it has to. And if Wilson truly brings his college flashes to life, if he brings the burst, the bend, the drive, then this Raiders defensive line won't just be good. It could be great. There's also another name drawing attention at Raiders OTAs, Ashton Jeanty. According to recent reports, the Raiders are using him in a very unique role, and honestly, it makes perfect sense. Jeanty's skill set has always been versatile. Watching the practice footage that surfaced, you can already tell the coaches are experimenting with how to best use him, lining him up in different spots, testing his flexibility, and seeing how much of a mismatch problem he can create. It's early, but it's smart, because in today's NFL, versatility is gold. And if Jeanty can carve out a role as a hybrid chess piece, maybe as a situational pass rusher, maybe as a blitzer from depth, he could be one of the more underrated pickups in this entire roster build. There's a quiet shift happening in Las Vegas, and it involves how the Raiders plan to use Ashton Jeanty. A recent report mentioned something that stood out immediately. Chip Kelly is lining Jeanty up all over the field. He's not just running inside zone or stretch plays. The Raiders are creating opportunities to get him the ball in space, and that changes everything. Last week's practices reportedly included screens, checkdowns, and quick throws into the flat, routes designed to get Jeanty one-on-one against linebackers or slower safeties. That's smart football. It's a reflection of where the game is going, because there's a big difference between 20 touches in between the tackles and 20 touches where 6 or 7 come in open space. It's about longevity. It's about maximizing every snap. Look at Nick Chubb, a phenomenal back, but almost all of his touches came on inside runs. Now, unfortunately, he may be near the end of his career. Now, flip the script. Look at Alvin Kamara. Look at Christian McCaffrey. Backs who still carry the ball, but also catch it. Guys who can line up in the slot or motion out wide. Their usage patterns keep them fresh, and it adds years to their careers. Jeanty could be that kind of player, and the Raiders know it. Let's look at some actual tape from OTAs. If you saw the footage from 2 days ago, you'll remember this play. But if you didn't, here's the breakdown. Geno Smith and Ashton Jeanty are in shotgun. On the snap, Geno immediately rolls right. That pulls the deep safety with him. Classic misdirection. Then Geno suddenly flips his hips and throws back to the left side, hitting Jeanty in the flat on what looks like a wheel or pivot route. It's a subtle wrinkle, but it opens up massive yardage after the catch. Now ask yourself, how often did we see Josh Jacobs run that kind of route? Or Zamir White? The truth is, almost never. That's why the Raiders kept guys like Amir Abdullah on the roster. Not for early down carries, but to be that third down option out of the backfield, because Jacobs wasn't that kind of receiver. Jeanty is. He has that Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey blueprint, a true dual threat. And this role the Raiders are carving out for him. It fits. We're talking wheel routes, angle routes, Texas concepts, option routes against linebackers, speed options, and yes, even misdirection plays like the one we just saw. There's even another clip that surfaced from 2 weeks ago that shows exactly that. Jeanty running a speed option with Geno Smith. It's not something you typically see in an NFL camp, but it's intentional. It shows how creative the Raiders want to be with this guy. Ashton Jeanty isn't just another name on the depth chart. He's a weapon. And the Raiders are already building an offense around his versatility. This next play is something we're just not used to seeing from the Raiders. Let's talk about the speed option. In these OTA clips, the Raiders are running a play that looks like a basic inside zone, but it's a fake. Ashton Jeanty takes an inside step, shows his hands like he's about to take the handoff. Textbook stuff. If you've ever played football, you know how that looks. The running back forms a pocket with his arms to take the ball cleanly. That's exactly what Jeanty does. But then it flips. Geno Smith keeps the ball and starts moving laterally. The defensive end crashes in, and Geno pitches it. Textbook speed option. It's clean, it's fast, it's something we've never seen in silver and black. Not with Derek Carr, not with Jimmy Garoppolo, not with Aiden O'Connell, not with Gardner Minshew. This is something new, and it's coming from Geno Smith and Ashton Jeanty. In one rep, the coach playing the edge defender commits hard to Geno, forcing the quick pitch to Jeanty. In another, Geno holds it longer, dragging the defender before flipping it out. Either way, it's clear the Raiders are installing speed option concepts into the offense. That's not just a wrinkle. That's a philosophical shift, and it lines up with what I've been hearing. This Raiders offense looks different. It feels different. According to someone close to the team, someone who's been there for years, this offense looks far more explosive than anything we've seen in the last 2 seasons. Here's what they told me. The way Geno pushes the ball downfield, I've never seen anything like that with Gardner, Aiden, Jimmy G, not even with Derek Carr. That's not a knock on those guys. It's just a fact. Geno Smith's deep ball is one of the best in the league. That's always been his strength. And the Raiders are finally building an offense that takes full advantage of it. They have speed, real speed. Trey Tucker, Dante Thornton Jr. guys who can outrun defenders, guys who can win on vertical routes. And then there's Ashton Jeanty. He's not just catching checkdowns. The Raiders are sending him on wheel routes, fake out post-to-wheel combos, over routes, even angle routes from the backfield. They're designing touches for him, not just plugging him into a role. It's a modern offense. It's fast, it's creative, and it's aggressive. This could be a top 10 scoring unit if things click the way they're trending. But of course, that brings us to the other side of the ball. If there's a true make-or-break factor for the Raiders in 2025, it's not the offense. It's the defense, specifically the secondary. And that's where the questions start. The defensive line looks solid. The linebacker group is serviceable. Honestly, there's not a massive gap between the 5th best linebacker core in the league and the 28th. But the secondary, that's where the margins get thin. And that's where games get won or lost. So let's talk about it. Right now, the projected starting corners are Eric Stokes and Darian Porter, two players with very different journeys and plenty of unknowns. The Eric Stokes puzzle. Eric Stokes is a former first-round pick, drafted by the Packers in 2021, and his early returns were promising. His first 2 seasons were really solid, but after that, things got bumpy. His play declined, his confidence seemed to waver, and fans started labeling him a bust. But the full story isn't that simple. During Stokes' best seasons, he was working with Jerry Gray, Green Bay's defensive backs coach from 2021 to 2022. Gray is highly respected around the league, and many believe his departure to Atlanta in 2023 coincided with Stokes' decline. That matters. Coaching changes don't just affect schemes. They can completely alter a young player's development curve, especially at a position as technique-driven as corner. Add to that, Joe Barry was Green Bay's defensive coordinator at the time. And while Barry brought energy, he wasn't exactly known for building elite secondaries. So it's very possible that a new setting, under PeteCarroll and Patrick Graham, could reignite what made Eric Stokes a first-round pick in the first place. Graham has coached under Bill Belichick, Brian Flores, and Steve Spagnuolo. That's a Hall of Fame coaching tree when it comes to defensive minds. If anyone can help a guy like Stokes reset, it's this staff. Darian Porter, the wild card. Across from Stokes is Darian Porter, and he might be one of the most intriguing players on the entire roster. Porter's a former wide receiver who converted to cornerback at Iowa State. He barely has 700 college snaps at the position. That's it. No 4-year resume, no long track record. Just raw traits, work ethic, and a small sample of strong play in his final season. But here's what makes Porter different. The upside. He's got length. He's got speed. And he plays with the kind of physicality that disrupts routes at the line of scrimmage. When he gets his hands on receivers, he can erase timing. And if you watched the Behind the Shield video the Raiders released during the draft, you saw PeteCarroll's excitement when they landed Porter. That's not just a throwaway clip. That's a Hall of Fame coach going all in on a developmental corner because he believes the ceiling is sky high. The depth factor, Bennett and beyond. Behind Stokes and Porter, the Raiders have Jacorian Bennett, a guy who flashed real potential last year, despite a rough rookie campaign. He's currently running with the second unit, but make no mistake. If either starter slips, Bennett will be ready. He's fast. He's aggressive. He just needs to refine his technique and limit the penalties. If he can do that, the Raiders might have 3 legitimate outside corners by midseason. Then there's Sam Webb, a player who's stuck around quietly but consistently. He's not flashy, but he's reliable. And in today's NFL, that counts. So where does that leave the secondary? There's a lot of unknown, but there's also a lot of hope. If Eric Stokes returns to form, if Darian Porter develops on schedule, and if Bennett takes the next step, the Raiders could have a young, athletic, high-upside secondary. And with the front 7 improving, the question becomes, can these corners hang in man coverage when it matters most? Because if they can, this defense might be better than anyone expects. The top of the depth chart will get most of the attention, but what separates good secondaries from great ones is the depth behind the starters. And right now, the Raiders are building something quietly impressive. Sam Webb, for instance, might not ever be a star. He's not the next Nnamdi Asomugha, but as a CB3 or CB4, he's reliable, physical, smart, and every defense needs glue guys like that. But it's not just at cornerback where the Raiders are developing options. At safety, there's Thomas Harper, a player the Raiders brought in last year after his release from another team. He stuck, and now he's taking first-team reps. That matters. He's clearly earned the staff's trust, and in Patrick Graham's system, where safeties need to cover ground, play downhill, and communicate like linebackers, that's no small task. There's also Jeremy Chin and Isaiah Pola-Mao, two hybrid defenders with very different skill sets. Chin brings range and versatility. Pola-Mao adds length and physicality. Neither is a superstar, but both are capable rotational pieces in a system that thrives on matchup flexibility. Coaching and scheme still matter. This secondary might not have a true shutdown corner, but what it does have is coaching. Remember, the Raiders didn't have elite DB talent 4 or 5 years ago either, but with the right scheme, the right development, and the right energy in the locker room, that unit quietly became one of the most reliable in football. In 2023, they dealt with injuries, but in 2022, the Raiders were a top 5 secondary by most advanced metrics. There's no reason they can't reach that level again, especially now that PeteCarroll is involved. Carroll knows how to develop DBS. That's been the core of his defensive philosophy for over 2 decades. And when you pair his experience with Patrick Graham's versatility, you get a coaching tandem that can mask youth, hide weaknesses, and elevate talent. A complementary defense. Also worth noting, a great defensive line makes every secondary look better, and the Raiders have that now. When your front four can generate pressure, when Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins are collapsing the pocket, the secondary doesn't have to cover for 5 seconds. They need to survive for 2.5. That's a massive difference. So while the questions are fair, yes, this secondary is unproven, the potential is real. The Raiders have quietly assembled a roster with playmakers on offense, upside on defense, and coaching that can bring it all together. And if the young DBs take a step forward this season, don't be surprised if Las Vegas finds itself in playoff contention, on the back of a defense that no one saw coming.